lot of you would have known our founder and CEO, Nikki Deasy, and she sends greetings to all of you. She's at the moment moving on from the organisation. A lot of NGOs begin with an entrepreneurial type person who has a vision and sees no obstacles at all in their way, and Nikki is that kind of person. She came from the business community and visited Nepal and thought that this would be her life's work to set up this organisation. And she has set up the organisation with a lot of support from corporate clients and from other, from all over the place. And now 4 years on, the organisation has reached the stage where we're quite well recognised in the sector in Ireland, and we have got funding from the Irish government in form of a 3-year grant. So now she's passed on to me. I'm a development professional. My background is in business studies, but I also have a master's degree in development studies, and I've worked in international development for more than 30 years now. Although most of my work has been in Africa, and I made my first trip to Nepal in May, a lot of the poverty issues are the same in nearly every place in the world. So with that, I'll just take you through how we're doing at the moment. This is Nikki, up in Humla where we work, up in the, you all know where it is, I don't have to describe that. But as you can see, she did the trekking around all by herself. Sometimes she had a guide, but a lot of times she was on her own. She's quite an intrepid person. We now have a board of people who represent different sides of the kind of skills that we need. And Depeche, we're very lucky to have him on our board. We also have business people, development specialists and accountants. We are lacking in the fundraising side, but we're hoping to fill that gap soon. So we moved into new offices in Galway, and the credit union has offices they rent to socially aware, shall we say, organisations, and we have a very, very nice small office, but it's lovely and bright, and we have nice neighbours and that, so we're very, very happy to have that. Up until April in this year, all of the work was done in the back room in Nikki's house. So you can imagine on a flag day or anything with 15 people trying to collect buckets and all the rest, it was quite a bit of bedlam. Okay, so you all know Nepal, I don't have to, and you know Humla as well, I'm sure. And these are locations of the different activities we're involved in. Again, Humla, so beautiful. Very beautiful. Scary sometimes. It's not, pretend that it isn't. This is the view from the office in Sinicot. And here you can, to prove I was actually there, myself and Nirmala, who's our country director. Our partners, we've recently partnered with a local organisation called Common Forum for Development. One of our tasks is to build sufficient capacity in this organisation that they can take over our work, and that we could be just maybe a funding tunnel for them, and that they will be doing everything themselves. At the moment, it's run by a project officer Saurav Lama, who's from the area himself. He doesn't have a huge amount of education, but he's one of these people who could do absolutely everything. He can advise people on how to rear goats. He can, bring a midwife to the house and maybe help out there as much as a man can do in any country. But we're very, very lucky to have him. And between him and our strong relationships with all the different government officials that we work with in the area, the program's doing well. These are the different partners. Here we have the head of the local government there in the top photo, and our different meetings. This is our little building here. You can see Saurav and Nirmala, and for an Irish audience, I was so surprised to see that this building is all ready and everything, but we had no hinges or locks for the door because they had to be flown in from Nepal Ganj, and they just weren't coming, so we weren't able to store anything in the building until the building was up for nearly 14 months before we were able to get the hardware for the door so that we could lock the door. These are the kind of issues. This is our demonstration plot on the bottom right hand side there. We do an awful lot of livelihoods development with the local women, and particularly the Dalits, the lowest caste women. And part of this work is to have a demonstration plot where we're showing how to grow new things that people aren't used to. So if they can see, well, they're not going to risk their own small patch to grow something that mightn't work, but if they see it growing in our patch, then the next season they might try it for themselves. Here's a lot of the women that all came to a big meeting we had, which was a feedback meeting for the local government officials. And it was really heartening for me to see, I told you that most of my work hasn't been in Nepal, but in Africa, one of the issues that they have in village meetings is that only men talk. Even if it's about childbirth or women's crops or mothers-in-law, only men talk. Now, it is a logical thing to know that, if we're talking about things that women are involved in, maybe the women might talk about them themselves. And these meetings, things had moved on so well that the women were able to stand up and say to the livestock officer in particular that they had not seen him in their village for more than 6 months. And where was he? And he was one of these guys I was telling Deepesh earlier, in the very nice suit and the very polished shoes. And you know that someone in a very nice suit and very polished shoes mightn't be going up to the villages very often, whereas the guy in the big boots and the torn jacket, you know that he is out working locally. So they were able to tackle him. I was very, very impressed. And he did promise that he would visit, so I'll find out in the next month if that has happened. This is something, we got this flag printed because we had lots of photographs of our work, but we had nothing with a sign to say that this is Foundation Nepal's work. And this is a new fundraising tool, some of the rest of you might be interested in, that we were able to get this done in Ireland, in the flag making, small industry here, if somebody makes flags. We gave her our logo and she made this flag. So the flag now goes around to the villages with the guy at the camera, and people can stand up and say, yes, this is the poultry house, or this is the clinic built by Foundation Nepal, and we unfurled the flag and take the photo, and now we have something to show our donors. And this has been a very, very useful tool for us. That's Nirmala on the far left, and you can see Saurabh there standing quite tall there at the back. Microfinance is all over the world becoming a really, really useful tool for people to grow their own businesses. We have used the women's groups, most of the women's groups that already exist, whether they're age group cohorts or even friends or extended families. And this group will work together, and there'll be a small amount of money, say €50 approximately. And there'll be a group of 8 women, and the €50 will go to one of them. And she will maybe buy some chickens, or she'll plant some crops, and she'll do a few things, and she pays back in very, very small amounts. But the group supports her, because once she's paid back the €50, then it can go to the next person in the group. So if she gets sick, or she has to look after her mother and can't do her work, the group will help her to pay back, because it's in their interest to get the money paid back quickly so the next person can get the money. So it's a good bonding mechanism, and it also creates a lot of solidarity in a group, and they're working together rather than against each other. The animal husbandry, the goats and the chickens. The goats have been particularly, people tend to like the goats more than the bees and the chickens. I suppose they're bigger. But what we do is that there are, again, 4 or 5 women in an area, and each of them will do a short workshop training course on how to look after a goat, and they'll all get a female goat, and there'll be a male goat somewhere in the village to do the necessary to create the new goats. Then when the new goats are born, they must hand on the females to another member of the community so that she can start rearing her own goats. Then the males are sometimes kept for stud goats, and sometimes are sold. Other times they're saved for weddings or funerals or other celebrations where you would need an animal to be killed for the party. The crops, so you can see this little structure here with the wood. This is the small greenhouse. People put plastic over, but this was peeled back so that we could see what was happening to create a greenhouse effect. I mean, up in the mountains, we're talking 3,500, 4,000 meters above sea level. The air is thin. I don't think it's literally thin, but it's, the plants are very susceptible to sunlight. They're very susceptible to anything in the atmosphere. So keeping them warm, keeping them protected until they get to be established is really, really important. These yellow necklaces, everywhere we went, people had these necklaces, and I was sure that there was some sign of some particular group, and that everybody, was involved in some religion. But apparently, a few months earlier, a guy had come in with sacks and sacks of yellow necklaces, and everybody had bought one. So no symbolism at all, except everybody liked the colour. Our small business development has worked quite well too. With the crops that people are growing, they're making these juices and jams, you can see down the bottom there, and selling them at the local market. This has been really, really useful. People to have actual cash money. It's great to grow grow your animals and grow your veg and so on, you can feed your family, but people need actual money as well. So this has been fantastic for those groups. And then up at the top, you can see the women there with their the herbs, and these are what they call the non-tree forest products, the herbs that grow in the forest, on the mountain. And one of the programs we're working with, we've brought some ecologists and climate change people up to Humla to talk with all the different stakeholders about these crops. People are going higher and higher and higher into the mountains to harvest these, and harvesting them at a younger and younger and younger time, so that they're not regenerating. So what we want to do is we're working closely with the government to set up a program so that these plants can be harvested in a sustainable way. Also looking at the way things are marketed. It was very interesting is if you see the size of that table and the space around it, big bales that size of these plants are taken to India and made into medicine. And there at the small airport in Humla, where they have these little jets that come in and take out, there would be 10 and 15 bales of these things at any one time waiting to go. So the volume of plant that is being taken from the mountains is considerable. There are very, very few regulations around this, but it could be a source of great income for the very poorest people who have to go climbing to get them. So we're hoping to do a bit of work on that. I don't know the names of any of these, I'm very sorry, and I'm sure that some of you would know what some of them are. Do you know them?
Yeah, I know them like this.
Okay. So you know the kind of things that we're talking about there. I did bring back a small jar of this the oil that people use, and there are all kinds of other things that have medicinal purposes, and the teas of course are great. We're working with some organic alternative food company in Galway to see if we can sell the teas here, but there's huge restrictions on exporting anything from Nepal. So I think that it's best if we stay and to have everything happen in Nepal, and then we can import the tea bags from Nepal rather than the tea. That everything be done in country, and the value added all happen there. Literacy, of course, is an obvious one, and the women I met when I was there telling me that they can't really read much, but they can understand and they can write their name, and so they just feel that they can guide their children better and that they're not less than anybody else. I think writing our own name is something that we absolutely take for granted, and it's such an empowering thing for others when they learn to do this. So these people, this again was our big meeting. Hi, you're welcome.
I'm sorry.
Not at all. At this big meeting, there were 48 women, and only 8 had to give their thumbprint. Everyone else was able to write their name. So that was quite amazing, because 5 years ago this wouldn't have been the case. Community development. We do a lot of work on human rights with local activists. As you know, in Nepal there have been a lot of harmful traditional practices, things like very early marriage and lack of inheritance rights for women. And the government has legislated against these things. But people away up in the mountains around Humla don't always know that. Or women who've brought their child to be registered in the police station without a husband or a man to say he's the father have often been turned away, because it is traditional in Nepal that only the man can register the birth. But that's now illegal. The woman is now also entitled to register the birth. But as common with a lot of places, the police can be a very conservative lot. So now the women know that it is their right to have their child registered, so that the child then will have a voting card, can sit exams, can attend the health clinic and so on. Here's the rights. This is an ID card, an Nepali ID card, and one wee person who's on a human rights site, not ours, I'm afraid. We support 3 health clinics out in the villages, and we have 2 midwives working, which has been one of the most dramatic, I think, changes that we've been able to support in the areas in which we work. Especially the fact that one of our midwives is a Dalit. She is from that lowest caste, and so she will attend any woman at all, and increasingly all of the women will allow themselves to be attended by her. So there's small changes in some traditional practices around birthing. Education. We supply notebooks and pencils to children who are the very poorest children so that they can attend school. In some schools they do not let the child attend class if they don't have a pencil and a copybook. So being poor is really excluding people from the very, very basics of education. You can see the classroom here is hardly what you call state of the art or anything, so it's great that we can make this small change. This is a better photo, excuse me. Sorry. Fundraising, we were talking about this earlier. This is Nepal Day, you might recognise. And this is some of our people, one staff member, Amanda, some of you know her there. She's our fundraising manager, and 3 volunteers, finding it harder and harder and harder to get money, in common with all NGOs and all charities. We're trying to be more and more innovative about these things, and we've recently opened a charity shop. The usual kind of charity shop selling second-hand clothes, shoes, bric-a-brac, although we got a load of bleak in from somebody recently, we were able to flog that at quite a nice higher price. It's really nice to have money that we don't have to ask for and say, I spend my time writing funding proposals, and I'm writing the same proposal and tweaking it to each different organisation's needs. And then it's like, well, what if everybody wants to support the goats? We can pay for goats 10 times over. Nobody wants to give us money for the hens or the education. So things have to be written in such a way that we have that flexibility, that we can move things across budget lines if we need to. And I spend a lot of time strengthening relationships with donors so that they trust us, that when we want to move things across budget lines, that they will agree to do that. We've had some good evaluations of our programme, which help us, help them to trust us that what we're doing is useful. Recently, UNICEF was in Humla looking at all the health programmes there and all the different stages, and they gave us an extremely high mark, in the high 90s, for our work in the health sector, which, our main approach is around livelihoods, but this means that we can perhaps partner with them later on, and that would be really, really useful for us to have that kudos of being able to put them on our website too. These are our donors. Electric Aid, we had preferred donor status with them, which meant we could apply 5 times a year. There's no guarantee of actually getting the money, but a lot of these small organisations, they give us 2, 3, 5,000. We were talking about that earlier, a year. Now they have so many people applying for the same amount of money that they're giving us 300, 400 at a time. So it's really, really, really difficult to get money. So I think we all need a philanthropist. Someone who's just going to write us a few checks a year and let us get on with it. I would just love that. So our Kathmandu office are up in the top flat in Kathmandu, in the middle of the town. It's not in a business district, but we have a very nice landlady, and there's electricity more often than not there, and we get on very well. On the office, a little bit more dishevelled, but again, the landlord lives next door, and we have a very good relationship with them. We still have to pay a hefty rent, but we're there. Galway office is the place I was telling you we have from the the credit union. We have a big table in the middle for our board meetings or for meetings with volunteers and all the rest of it, and then all the real work gets done around the sides of the walls, as you can see. You can see our nice photographs. Some of you might remember the big photograph exhibition that there was in the Irish Aid offices, and we inspire ourselves by having these photos on the walls. This is the shop I was telling you about. You can see Deepesh, it's a small shop,
right,
but it's, it does the job. And we got the sign printed for very little money, and people give us things, give us discounts quite a bit, but we don't get anything for nothing. I really think you're great that you can get your brochures printed for nothing, because we certainly can't. And after a while, when we're asking the same people over and over again to do things, they stop returning our calls, they stop returning our emails, so to try and have that balance about, what we can get for free and what we need to pay for, it's not an easy one. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.